Hello, Jimmy here once again, welcome back. I'm sounding slightly echoey today because there are important and exciting things happening in the world of Jimmy, and more details on that to follow when it's prudent. But today we're talking about The Last Kingdom. So I'm sure everybody has noticed that The Last Kingdom is now back with a 5th season. It's the last season, and then they're getting a movie, and it is as shockingly awful looking as ever. Loads of people have asked me if I will do a review of the Last Kingdom Season 5 trailer, and I was just going to do that, but it just looked mostly like this. Black leather, white people dreadlocks, modern paper, everybody's wearing black for some reason, all of the Icelanders look like cavemen. I hate this so much. All of this is awful. Why is it so dark? Why is everyone wearing greys? Why is it just grey and black? Why is it all just grey and black in this show? Why is it just grey and black? So instead, I've decided to do something slightly more nuanced and just take a look at a few things here and there that I think could have been improved upon, and explain why. So, if you're not familiar with The Last Kingdom, it's based on the Saxon tales, or the Saxon stories, by Bernard Cornwell, who is a prolific historical fiction writer. He's one of my favourite authors in terms of historical fiction. I loved his Harlequin series when I was doing my undergraduate degree. I loved Sharp, both the book and the TV show. And it's important to remember that Bernard Cornwell had no influence, no control, and no input in the show at all, and he didn't want any. Same with Sharp. He worked in TV for a while, decided that it wasn't his thing, and he didn't want any influence on the TV show. So it's important at the outset to remember, this is not Cornwell's baby, this is somebody else's TV show, okay? Good. Having said that, he himself says that he puts the plot before the history in his work, and that's absolutely true. What he does is similar to what you get in things like the Flashman series of novels, where there will be fictional stuff happening to fictional people within a wider context of real history happening. Like in Sharp, it's the Napoleonic Wars. In the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, it's things like the rise of Alfred the Great, for example. So we have to bear all of that in mind when we're talking about The Last Kingdom, the TV series. But one of the things that Sharp, the TV series, does is it makes a good fist of the costumes in the period. Like, they tried with the costumes, and they got the costumes 1,000 times better than most historical TV shows get the costumes, with notable exceptions like some of the menswear in the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes, for example, or things like some of Robert Eggers's movies, like The Vavitch, where all of the costuming is just... Now you've got me saying that costuming in a historical movie is chef's kiss, and bet most of you never thought you'd see me do that. The Last Kingdom looks like shit. It looks awful. All of the costuming is dreadful. And not just dreadful from an historical point of view, but dreadful in terms of being original good costuming. Bernard Cornwell, in an interview with medievalists.net, said that he isn't convinced that the popularity of Game of Thrones led to the commissioning of The Last Kingdom, which I think is incredibly optimistic on his part because it looks just like Game of Thrones. The lighting is all very similar, the cinematography is quite similar, and the costuming is just GOT costuming. And one of the things he said is he doesn't really see the connection between the two unless it's brutal men wearing leather and chainmail beating the shit out of each other. And that's basically what it is. Some of the stuff that Last Kingdom gets super duper ultra mega wrong, even in its 5th series, is stuff like the colours. Take a look at this manuscript. This is a manuscript from the 11th century, and it shows people wearing typical costume of the time, men wearing hose, shoes and tunics, women wearing dresses, mantles and headscarves. Headscarves, by the way, were pretty much de rigueur for Christian women in Europe at this point, especially for married women, to wear as everyday wear. Unmarried women could get away with it a lot easier without, gossip and that kind of thing happening. This is what I think of when I think of the early medieval period, is the vibrancy, the different colours, people wearing tunics, dresses, headscarves, and hose. That is the early medieval look in most of Europe. In fact, it's the look in most of Europe for centuries. Effectively, from the end of the Roman Empire to the 12th century, people just looked like this. And people wore colours. It was really easy to make yourself colourful. If you had weld growing nearby, you could have a beautiful yellow tunic. If you had madder growing nearby, you could have a pink tunic. If you were lucky and you had access to woad and the money and time required to process that woad, or had someone you could pay to do that for you, you could have a blue tunic. Green was doable with a mixture of those two. If you had chestnuts nearby, you could have brown. If you had lichen nearby, you could have a variety of different colours. And people did. People dyed their clothing. Lots of the clothing that we found from the early medieval period, in fact, most of the clothing that we found is in some way coloured, or at least has decoration of colours on it, be that embroidery, tablet weaving, and so on. So why, in the Last Kingdom, do kings dress like this? Why in the Last Kingdom does a queen dress like this? Why in the Last Kingdom does Uhtred of Bebbanburg dress like this? Because this is not early medieval clothing at all. And where in Sharp, part of what helps us believe that we're watching something set in the past is the clothing, here the clothing actually detracts from the feeling that we're watching something set in the past, because this clothing isn't from the past. This clothing is from a 1950s Viking-themed B-porn movie, and it's not good. It's really not good. And it's been like that all the way through. I mean, take a look at Haston. He looks terrible. I mean, the leather lamellae on his lamellar vest thing are curling up. Like, this is meant to be an important guy. Why is his kit so bad? Like, why are people wearing random boob chainmail? Why is that a thing? Incidentally, this is a reworking of Uhtred's vest from the 3rd season, and they seem to have just added these little windows of chainmail over his boobs for some reason. I really don't understand. And I'm not going to go all, Lindy Beige and say like, the grass is the wrong breed for this millennium, because I don't have to. You don't even have to nitpick on this show. It just looks garbage. Everywhere's dark. King Constantine II's palace is dark. Why is he in a dark palace? Why is it this dark? It's daylight. It shouldn't be that dark. Not even without lamps should it really be this dark and dingy everywhere. They had lamps, they had cresset lamps, they had spike lamps, they had illumination back then. They were capable of doing things. Not everybody went blind trying to write all of the thousands of manuscripts that we've got because they had light available to them. Everything is grey, all of the colours are washed out, and we all know that that's to make it look, grim and barbaric like it was back then. But this is meant to be a king. And he's just a symphony in brown. This is what an early medieval king looks like. This is from the 10th century. This is a king in a golden crown, a bright red tunic, a cloak lined in gold. That's probably a brocaded tablet weave that he's got decorating his cloak. Incredible richness and wealth is being displayed by people. So when we see people wearing stuff like this, that's just several fur coats chopped into squares and then sewn back together for some reason that you found in the local charity shop. But why, though? They had amazing pieces of clothing, like pile-woven sheepskin cloaks. Put somebody in one of those. Heck, just get one of those IKEA Flocati rugs that looks enough like them, dye it brown and grey, and make it look a bit like it if it's a cheaper option that looks okay. I mean, you can do that. I'd still complain about it, but it looks way better than just meh. Like, this is meant to be a band of warriors from Iceland coming to help their people in the Danelaw, and they just look like garbage. They just look really dumb. Like, they look stupid. Like, if I were on the walls of York, and saw these people charging across the plains of York towards me, I'd probably just laugh at them and then go pick the bodies clean once the bowmen had finished their work. Like, this just looks so daft, you know? Nobody's just wearing a tunic and hose. Even most of the background characters aren't dressed great in this, and normally in historical fiction, it's the BG where you see the reenactors who are just wearing good clothing for the period. Here, that's not the case. And even when you think, oh, maybe things aren't too bad, look, we've got warriors wearing helmets. You zoom out and you see this thing. Why is that there? Why did somebody who was in charge of designing some of these props get away with, oh yes, those Icelandic runes from the early modern period that are Christian? Oh yeah, let's just perpetuate that myth. It's just so boring to have to say stuff like this. You expect this kind of thing from certain productions. You'd expect it from something like the Ultimate Warrior series, where it's a little bit silly, it's based on bunkum, and they don't really have much of a budget. But to see it from a really well-performing, highly regarded prime-time, digital universe equivalent of prime-time, TV show with a big budget, with a big following, based on a beloved series of books by a renowned historical fiction author, it's just disappointing. Like, we know that you're just cashing in on the leather and sex of Game of Thrones. We know. We get it. Game of Thrones was amazing, and the BBC wanted their own version, and you decided to go with Uhtred of Bebbanburg, and you just decided to make it sexy black leather times. But it sucks, and it sucked from episode 1. The only redeeming feature is the bit of it that's in the books, because the whole of the rest of it is garbage. And frankly, I would recommend that you just read the books instead, because they're way, way more entertaining, and you don't have to turn all of the saturation up on your TV to be able to work out what colour clothing people are wearing, because everybody is wearing that colour that you get when you're a kid and you mix all of the paints together to try and make a new colour. That's the colour people are wearing. The gold jewellery in this show is grey. The one dude in the series who is wearing what looks like a nice penannular brooch is wearing a really nasty penannular brooch based on one of these guys. And even that is obscured by a ridiculous cloaky mantley thing that is just silly. Like, we're at a point now in the costuming for this show where people are climbing up a cliff and their clothes are making it difficult for them because they're wearing all of this ridiculous kinky leather. Like, no shame, if anyone out there is into leather, great, good for you, but not sure this is a thing that existed back then. Maybe a nice wool tunic would have made it easier for you to climb up those cliffs, Uhtred, instead of your tons of weird chrome-tanned junk that you've decided to wear. Don't even get me started on the rest of the armour and war gear, we'll be here all night. But to see the Anglo-Saxons are black leather-clad heroes and the foreign menace of the Norseman is furry boots and at one point a sleeveless leather fur-trimmed vest, it's just boring. Like, frankly, it's just dull, and I don't understand why we're seeing it. So how specifically could these things be improved? I've, vented my spleen for long enough now. How could you improve on these things? Well, for a start, you could look into using natural fibres and natural dyes, or colours that look like natural dyes. I say this to reenactors as well, so if you're a reenactor and you're looking for some hints and tips on not looking like this, go for colours that are achievable in the period. And they are myriad. There are lots of colours from high visibility yellow to disgusting orange to Pepto-Bismol pink to royal blue to crimson to greens of every hue. You can make an amazing impression using natural dyes, and it would have been so, so lovely to have seen a king doing that at one point in the new season. It would have been nice to have seen anybody wearing a variety of colours. That would have been fantastic. It would have been nice to have seen just some wool and linen, fabrics that actually existed in the period being used. And you see this in films, again, like The Witch, where people are wearing colours. I mean, you can't really tell they're wearing the colours, but they're wearing the fabrics that would have been available, and those are shown off on camera. You can see the hand stitching and hand finishing in some of the clothing, and that is fantastic, and that makes you really engage with it in a different way. It helps you to be immersed in this world. Another thing that helps with that is accessories. You see the occasional Thor's hammer, you see the occasional cross, but they're really just boring, crude little pieces. Why not commission a couple of nicer pieces? You have the budget for it, and let's not pretend that they don't have the budget for it, because they do. Because these are double figures, not quadruple figures, in terms of getting a nice looking piece of jewellery based on a find. If I can do it, I'm pretty sure that the BBC and Nutflax can do it. Get yourself a nice, it doesn't even have to be properly granulated, but a nice granulated filigreed cross. Get yourself a nice inscribed Thor's hammer based on a real find. Let's have some of the Viking and Norse women, let's have some of the Norse women wearing tortoise brooches based on finds. Strings of beads, veils. This is another thing that we're not seeing at all, really, throughout most of the series, is women wearing veils and headscarves, when they were a pretty central accessory. A queen would probably be wearing one. A queen would definitely be wearing one. It's another opportunity for you to style it, to style the hair, to wear accessories like gold and silver veil pins. Why not? Get yourself, fancied up. A king should be wearing nice colours. We could have some beautiful embroidery. And one place where we actually see that effort being made, incredibly, is in Series 1 of Vikings, where this tunic makes a very brief appearance, and it is really quite nice. It's blue, it's decorated, and it looks early medieval. Fantastic. And this is all stuff that doesn't have to break the bank. If you're a reenactor, get a nice copper alloy, get a nice brass penannular brooch, get an iron penannular brooch for £5, for £10. Get a nice belt strap end and a buckle for £10-20 that will add to your character and enhance your look no end. You look superb. You look so much better than every single person in this show. Get a tunic that looks like a tunic instead of, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. It isn't a tunic. It isn't a wraparound jacket. I don't know what this is. I barely know what it's made from. I'm pretty sure that's not really leather. Get yourself stuff that looks simple but period. And it can look badass. You would be lying if you said that you didn't think this guy looked badass. This guy looks badass. Alright, that's a few things. What else? I mean, maybe turn up the saturation so we can actually see some of the colours people are wearing? That would be lovely. Put effort into the details. A lot of the details in the show look really shoddy, and that's in the costuming, that's in the accessories, that's in things like the architecture, the fact that we clearly just have modern-looking weird lamps, torches somehow burning. Glad they found that petrol deposit nearby. None of these people look like they could live in these clothes. How do you pee in this? How do you take a number 2 in this? Like, how do you weave wearing all of this junk? How do you fight properly in a line? Not that they fight in lines, wearing all of this crap. Like, how do you do any of that? Do they sleep in this? Put a bit of effort into the details, and it's the same with reenactment. The details really, really help, and I don't mean that you have to hand sew and hand finish every single garment. Of course you don't have to. I do because I'm a nutcase, but you don't have to be a nutcase. But the details will really help. Don't wear your watch when you go onto the Living History encampment. Take out your earrings, especially if your earrings are very clearly not historical. Try and wear long sleeves as much as possible, because that was ubiquitous in the early medieval period. Everybody wore their sleeves long. Everybody had sleeves. It's really simple stuff, and it's beginners reenactment stuff, and it's the sort of thing which causes reenactors like me, and a lot of you guys, I'm sure, who work in films sometimes, to turn up on set, look at the cast in their costumes and go, huh, nah. Because that is how we react when we turn up on set. We may not always say it, but when we turn up on set and we see the main cast wearing crap like this, we always think, wow, you guys didn't do your homework. You look really stupid. And if you were transported back in a time warp 1,000 years, you'd probably be laughed at, killed, or both, in quick succession. So, yeah, The Last Kingdom Season 5, it looks terrible as ever, and I know Uhtred isn't real, and the real Uhtred, who was an ealdorman of Northumbria, lived quite a long time after this is set. But it's awful. It's truly, truly awful. And Bamborough doesn't even look like that. Bamborough looks like this. I mean, guys, like, you could have found a better hill. Heck, you could have just gone to Bamborough, photoshopped out the castle, and put a new castle in its place. Like, put the effort in, lads. Come on. I mean, I've camped in Bamborough Castle. It's not like that. The thing throughout the series that I just don't understand, frankly, it's just bemusing, is Uhtred's weird backscabbard-mounted, two-handed, very cheap-looking sword with its funky light bulb. Like, why does he have a light bulb sword? I don't understand this. It's so strange. He's got like a little nightlight on his sword, and it's really weird. Like, is it an orb? Does he ponder it? How? Like, I mean, yeah, you could have made an amber sword pommel that looked like an early medieval sword pommel. Just don't do that. It's just so silly. I mean, Bernard, throw me a bone. Come on, throw me a bone here. I just want to lay it down now, and I'll lay it down at the end. I watched this show for you people. I hope you appreciate what I've put my body through for you. Diolch yn fawr iawn am ymuno unwaith eto. Thank you very much for joining me once again. Thank you to all of my lovely patrons and all of my new patrons, and I am really blown away by some of the lovely things you guys have been sending me in the post recently, so diolch yn fawr. I'm very humbled. Very humbled. Thank you very much indeed. Tan y tro nesa, till the next time, hwyl am y tro. Bye for now. Mention the shavy hair? Do I mention the white people dreadlocks and the shavy hair? They all know it. They all know it's dumb. They all know it's dumb. They already know. They already know. There's a whole video about it. It's my first 100k video. They already know. It's fine.